friend. Thank you so much for your kind participation. And we are going to start today's session with an invocation of a song. So let me just share the screen. I request you to kindly mute yourself so that we can avoid disruptions.
তোমাদের এই হাসি খেলায় এই কথাটি মনে রেখো। তোমাদের এই হাসি খেলায় এই কথাটি মনে রেখো। আমি যে গান গেয়েছিলাম মনে রেখো। আমি যে গান গেয়েছিলাম জীর্ণ পাতা ঝরার বেলায় মনে রেখো। এই কথাটি মনে রেখো। শুকনো ঘাসে শূন্য বনে আপন মনে অনাদরে অবহেলায় গান গেয়েছিলাম মনে রেখো। আমি যে গান গেয়েছিলাম মনে রেখো। আমি যে গান গেয়েছিলাম জীর্ণ পাতা ঝরার বেলায় মনে রেখো। এই কথাটি মনে রেখো। দিনের পথিক মনে রেখো। আমি চলেছিলাম রাতে সন্ধ্যা প্রদীপ নিয়ে হাতে। দিনের পথিক মনে রেখো। আমি চলেছিলাম রাতে সন্ধ্যা প্রদীপ নিয়ে হাতে। যখন আমায় পাতার থেকে গেল ডেকে ভেসেছিলাম ভাঙা ভেলায় গান গেয়েছিলাম মনে রেখো। আমি যে গান গেয়েছিলাম মনে রেখো। আমি যে গান গেয়েছিলাম জীর্ণ পাতা ঝরার বেলায় মনে রেখো। এই কথাটি মনে রেখো।
Dear and respected friend, thank you so much for your kind attention. I, Randhir Kumar Gautam, on behalf of Viswanidhan Center for Asian Blossoming, Puducherry and Chennai, welcome you to attend today's topic of the Sunday Swadhyaya Chakra talk, Emergence of Levels of Self, a new theory of consciousness. We are so grateful to present our youngest speaker of Swadhyaya Chakra dialogue, Miss Pooja Soni. She is a writer and a scholar at Kingston University, London. We welcome Professor Anand Kumar Giri, Professor at Madras Institute of Developmental Studies, Chennai, and all the respected participant viewers, both on Zoom platform, Facebook platform, and our YouTube channel. Let me give a brief introduction to our honorable speaker. Pooja Soni is a young and creative scholar from Kingston University, London. She is doing her research in modern European philosophy at Kingston University. She has a chemical engineering degree. Now she is engaged in philosophy and philosophical insights. Um, Today, she will be delivering her talk on the very topic, Emergence of Levels of Self, a New Theory of Consciousness, which is one of her books. Uh, Consciousness is a very universal characteristics of human. It is a biological function. However, it varies individual to individual. It has been one of the most fundamental problems in philosophy. Her book, divided into 11 chapters, this monograph is an attempt to make sense of new connotation of philosophy of consciousness with multidisciplinary analysis, uh, which incorporates insights from philosophy, psychology, biological science, linguistic, and so on and so forth. Let me also give a kind of brief introduction to our Swadhyay Sahachakra. Swadhyay Sahachakra is a circle of uh, learning self and mutual studies. It is an initiative of studying and learning together self, culture, societies, and the world. Friends associated with this are eager to walk and mediate with new horizons of thinking and new movements of social and cultural change at work in our contemporary world. We study seekers such as Maharshi Aurobindo, great philosopher, Mahatma Gandhi, Chittaranjan Das, a creative thinker and creative soul from Orissa, and many others from around the world. We also present our own writings and reflect upon our creativity together. We also invite seekers from different fields of life to share with us their lives, vision, sadhanas, and struggles for creating a world of beauty, dignity, and dialogue. We meet every Sunday or sometimes on Wednesday. We are now nurturing this creative dialogues with different institutions from India and abroad. With this brief introduction, now I would like to invite our speaker, Pooja Soni, to kindly share her views about books, particularly her wisdom and understanding on consciousness, the new theory of consciousness. You are cordially invited, please.
Thank you so much, Randir. I'm delighted to be speaking here. So I've been working on this problem of the self and consciousness for about eight years, and so I'm delighted to discuss this very basic concept of the self, and this topic of self is quite important in the world that we live right now, because you have gadgets like phones controlling you, as opposed to you controlling yourself. So the subject-object relationship is the hot topic in philosophy. It has been an unsolvable dilemma for most philosophers. So I do my bit. I tried to solve the problem of the mind-body problem. So I wrote this book. Let me just share my screen. Please let me know if it's shared. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. So my book is titled Emergence of Levels of Self, a New Theory of Consciousness. So this is my book. It was published in 2020 by Pertinent Press, a publisher based in Oxford. So the basic questions that I tried to tackle in my book is, what is a self? The idea of self that I present here is the most parsimonious account possible. The self is a particular manner of persistence as a form, or it is the ability to persist in interactions with the world, which preserve the form, and resisting interactions which do not preserve that form. The form could be physical or mental. So the self is basically anything a rock could be a self because it has a form and it interacts with the surrounding, and it could lose its form. The physical form of the rock is its essence. So anything could be a self. So I start with this idea of the self, which is very parsimonious and very simple. And I identify myself as a panpsychist, but I am more than just a panpsychist or pan-experientialist. So the idea of the self is anything which can accommodate change and can resist change of unwanted kind is the self. So the next question is, what is consciousness? Consciousness, I define consciousness as this process of persist and escape interactions. So basically, consciousness is that process. It's an unending process. Any entity which strives to preserve its essence is part of the process of consciousness. And the next is, what is life? Life, according to me, is what Aristotle would also agree. It is something that allows an entity to change. And I should also mention the account of self that I try to explore is close to Immanuel Kant's idea of the subjective apperception. He explores in his book The Critique of Pure Reason the idea of self, the self as an enclosed entity which receives impressions from the object. My idea of the self is close to Maurice Merleau-Ponty's account of embodiment. Merleau-Ponty says that when you intend, you're with the world, you're you as a subject are not different from the object. You and the subject share a very close interaction with each other. So Maurice Merleau-Ponty's account of embodiment is ingrained in my concept of the self. And Jacques Lacan's idea of the mirror stage is also incorporated in this idea, because when in his very famous book, Ecfrix, Jacques Lacan talks about the formative eye, the infant when it interacts with the mirror and sees itself in the mirror image. What it's doing is it's animating the mirror image. So the self's interaction with the environment is of the nature of animating the object in the external world. So this aspect of self, so there are various characteristics of self. The most parsimonious account of self is insufficient to explore the various characteristics of the self. In order to explain the various characteristics of the self, I created this theory which shows consciousness as levels of self. So when you talk about levels, then you start talking about the developmental stages through which an infant goes through and develops into this completely mature human being. So in order to incorporate the various facets of the self and its characteristics, it is very pertinent to look at the contributions of psychologists like Jean Piaget and his theory of developmental psychology. And my idea of the self is also close to Fichte's intentionality, because I explored the idea that when if someone is a self, if you consider something or someone as a self, you're necessarily saying that they are projecting their essence onto the world in interaction with the world. So Fichte's idea of the projection of intentionality is also incorporated here. So the self is not just one entity, or it's not just like a reaction. It's a multifaceted entity persisting in each living and non-living entity. So I'll move on to the next question. So in my book, I try to solve the problem, the most important problem in philosophy. It has always been an important problem, namely the mind-body problem, the problem of how you can account for change in the body, which is not instantiated by a physical effect upon the body. So how is it that a body can move without being instigated to move from a physical effect? So that's basically, in short, that's basically the mind-body problem. The another problem that I try to solve in my book is the meta problem of consciousness. The meta problem of consciousness was formulated by philosopher David Chalmers in 2020. The main question to be solved in this problem is Thomas tries to seek out the possibility of answering a question such as, how is it that a person or a child grows to ask questions such as why God exists, why we exist, why the world exists, or why consciousness exists at all? Why do we have to be beings with more than just causal relationship? Why are we not just physical entities? Why are we more than just physical entities? Why is physics why can't we explain consciousness with just physics? Because physics can explain everything in the physical world, right? So the meta problem of consciousness is about explaining why and how we develop the level of awareness to ask questions such as why God exists, why consciousness exists, why physics exists. So this is one of the questions that I try to solve in my book. The next question is, what is the essential condition for emergence of new experience? This is the central aspect of my theory. I explored the idea that we go through various experiences, but what is it that leads to the emergence of new experiences? Why is it that we can experience so many experiences over the course of our life, and what is that underlying mechanism which gives rise to new experiences? How does simply how does an infant learn to, let's say, think abstractly? How does an infant ask questions like what is this, or why is this like this? What is the time, or things like that? So how does an infant learn new experiences? How do we start experiencing feelings, self-conscious emotions? So what is the glue that keeps experiences together, but still it generates new experiences? So these are some of the questions that I try to solve in my book. So the first chapter is necessarily about self-reference, self-reference as a choice. So self-reference is a choice. I posit the idea that when an entity, any entity, now undergoes self-reference, it is undergoing change on its own, and it is projecting a choice by undertaking a change upon itself. So this idea of self-reference comes from the law of identity, which says A equals A, which is based on self-reference. I use this the law of identity, A equals A, to say that A as a self, when it is a self, it undergoes change, and when the change, when it incorporates a change which can preserve its essence, then it is necessarily said to have undergone the process of self-reference. Self-reference, to me, answers the question, is A of the future like A of the past? Like, when an entity, let's say A, undergoes change, what is necessarily happening is the reference of its future state onto its past state. the relationship between the self and its environment is of the nature of self-reference, because the environment affords the self change. The self-reference is the projection of one state onto another state to find itself within an entity or among different entities. So we will explore different facets of self-reference or change within an entity and also outside the entity, because I will be exploring the aspect of the self which is also which is not just embodied, which is not just embedded and inactive, but also extended. So I explored these characteristics of the self in my book in a very emergent manner. So the self basically is a process of accommodating feasible change, resisting unfeasible change in order to preserve the essence of beingness or form. So here, the essence of beingness or form is basically what Aristotle would call the soul. According to Aristotle, we have different kinds of soul based on different faculties that we possess. So the beingness or form is like the faculties that we possess. It is the self is the domain of two different phases of experience. So since the self is the seat of positive and negative experiences, it is also the domain of two phases, the positive and negative kind of experiences. The act of accommodating feasible change is called persist interaction. So the positive experiences, such as, let's say, happiness, would qualify as persist interaction. And the act of resisting change, the act of resisting, which Maurice Merleau-Ponty had called adduction, is termed as escape interaction or a negative experience, let's say. So the substrate of self is that which is strived to be preserved in each interaction. So now you have this picture of the self. The self has a substrate which it tries to preserve in its interaction with the environment. And the only two kinds of interactions that the self could have with the environment is persist and escape interaction, namely the positive and negative interactions. So I expound various levels of self. In level first, that is the first level self, the body is the essence, and the self in its journey of interacting with the environment, also in addition to developing faculties such as movement or enactment or emotion, it also develops its syntax. So the mind, the entity, such as a child or an infant, while it's interacting with the physical world, it also fills those slots, which Marvin Minsky had famously said that we are born with slots and we fill those slots. These slots are syntax based. So the first level self, such as a baby in a womb, is the first level self, which is unable to interact with the environment, which undergoes a very stringent phase of change, in the sense that it cannot react towards the stimulus. It just accommodates change, in the sense that Immanuel Kant would have said that the object is that which projects its impressions upon the subject, and the subject just accepts those impressions and does nothing. So here in the first level self, the body is the essence of the infant that it tries to preserve in its interaction within the amniotic sac, or it could be the first level self could be just a table with the form and trying to interact with the environment. And the isness is the relation of the entity with itself. The is as we know it signifies the embeddedness of the subject within the pool of objects in the environment. So, and the third aspect of the first level self is the appearance of movement. In my theory, appearance, movement is key. Movement or change is key, because when it signifies that an entity has undergone change. So so the I is the projection. In first level self, we identify ourselves. The most parsimonious account of ourselves is the I. So we identify ourselves with this concept of I-ness before we can identify ourselves with other names. So the I is a projection of essence of beingness of one state of an entity upon another state within the entity. So the first level, the basic kind of self, is an interaction. Its struggle is within itself, because it cannot inflict any kind of change upon the environment. For instance, a table, it projects, when it undergoes change, it projects its essence, which is the form, upon itself, and it tries to sustain that form as long as possible. This kind of reference, this kind of change or reaction or reference gives rise to the inner metaphor, the is. The is the I is the I in some sense represents the isness of the entity within itself. The I is the embedded body within the environment. So the basic kind of self, the first level self, has one thing in common with itself, that is the isness. It references with only itself because it knows nothing about the environment. The first level self is not aware of the stimulus because the stimulus is the felt effect upon the body. It is not aware of the stimulus as existing outside itself. That is something that the baby or the self learns in the next level. Here, the one key point to notice is that as we grow up, as we go up the stages, the infant is assumed to grow. So this is purely a theory which is true to the developmental psychology, but at the same time, it's a very deep account of what a self is while it's being what it is. So the first level self has no awareness of the stimulus; it just feels the stimulus as itself. The second, when we move on to the second level, which emerges from the first level, we have a moving body. In the previous level, we had a body embedded nicely in the environment and not changing, not exhibiting any change. But the change that it exhibits is when it loses form. For instance, a table moves only when it loses its form. When, let's say, a hammer breaks the table and breaks it into pieces, that's what I call the appearance of movement. So when something loses its form, it's said to have undergone escape interaction with the environment. So distraction means a physical entity has engaged in an escape kind of interaction with the environment. So this qualifies it as a self. So in addition to interacting with the environment in a persisting manner, it also interacts with the environment in an escape manner when it loses its essence, which is its physical form. So when we move on to the next level of self, which is the second level of self, we see that the infant starts moving in the sense that we can see that the infant starts to experience reflex actions. So the syntactical slots, the second group of words, let's say that the mind of the infant is active when it's experiencing reflex actions, is the adjectives. I say it's adjectives because when you have adjectives are of the form of isness. When adjectives are metaphors, you have metaphors when you compare something. So adjectives are like you compare something and then you characterize something as having a certain quality. So even though an infant doesn't express adjectives when it's in the womb, we assume that it develops this faculty of using adjectives. So the second level self, the emergent faculty that the second level self learns to experience is the reflex action. So in this level, the senses are perceptual systems capable of enactment. In the second level self, we see that the infant grows, the sense organs are completely grown, and the sense, when you shine a bright light onto the womb, and you see that the infant experiences reflexes like blink reflex. So the sense organs necessarily act as selves. When the sense organs experience reflex action, you can see an inactive form of interaction with the environment. So the sense organs necessarily act as tools of the self in undergoing the persist and escape kind of interaction within the womb. You could see the same kind of interaction between, let's say, an animal, let's say an amoeba. When an amoeba is capable of extracting food from the environment and ejecting waste, this kind of intelligence it would qualify as the second level self. Just like an infant which could experience reflexes. So the infant, through experiences of hiccup reflexes such as hiccup and blink reflex, is undergoing this dual experience with the world. So if you look at the micro expressions, you could qualify the hiccup reflex as a persist kind of interaction, an interaction which enhances the essence of the infant, and the blink reflex is an escape kind of interaction, because you could literally see the senses are trying to escape. So Paul Ekman, psychologist Paul Ekman, has done extensive work on qualifying micro expressions, and his work necessarily gives equation-like account of emotions, which we will see in the next level. The self, as a second level self, is aware of the stimulus as externally existing effect. So this is emergent from the first level self, which is not aware of the external entity. So the third level self, emerging from the second level self, is the mind. So the moving mind, the moving body emerges into a mind. This happens when the infant starts experiencing emotions. Each emotion could be characterized as a collection of reflexes. So the third level self is any entity, or let's say an infant capable of experiencing emotions, because there the senses act collectively to either persist in an interaction or escape from an interaction. And in the third level self, the infant is capable of using some verbal expression to signify, to refer to nouns in the external world. And so emotions, through emotions, the third level self learns to understand the world through nouns, and that's when the body of the individual turns into a mind. A collection of muscles moving to support or prevent exposure of the senses or the body to external stimulation is an emotion. So emotion is a collection of effects which the body enacts in relation to the environment. There are two types of emotions, persist and escape kind of emotions, namely the positive and negative. When you look at aggression, if you look at aggression, you would see that micro expressions signify that when you are aggressive, when you're angry, what your senses are necessarily doing is they are closing you off against an unnecessary or undesirable stimulus. So as a society, we have got it wrong when we say that anger is bad for you, or anger is an undesirable experience. But it could be the case that in anger, you're trying to escape more than trying to inflict any damage to the other person. So this is one of the most important discoveries, I would say personally, in my journey of understanding consciousness. So in emotions, there are vocalizations in emotions. So those vocalizations that the infant uses are necessarily the basic forms of nouns that the infant tries to learn as it grows. So, and when we talk about emotions, we could talk about sadness, depression, and how depression could be something, some sort of a self-inquiry, because sadness is an escape kind of emotion, in the sense that the senses close themselves off. When you're depressed or sad, you pay attention to your inner self. You're not exposed to the environment. So you find the inner God in yourself, and when you lose the free will to act, that's when you find God within yourself. In some sense, you're free to explore the inner world in when you're depressed or sad, because your senses necessarily afford you the opportunity to look inside. So the mind, so when the infant gets to the stage of being a mind, the mind is that which makes the body move in the absence of a physical effect impinged on it by physical stimulus. The mind emerges from the bodily interaction. So in my book, I show how just a causal relationship between the body and its environment could give rise to what we call the mind. It's that simple as that. We don't have to look for mind in spirit or in any non-physical entity, but still it's an effect which emerges from bodily interaction. So the self, the infant, is aware of the stimulus as being like itself, as a collection of effects. So when you become a mind, you know that the environment is like itself. There's something in the environment which is like itself, like you. And the next level of self is the fourth level self. So now we have a mind. So the infant as a mind of its own, it understands that the object is like itself, and it can experience emotions. So what's next? The next aspect of the self is the extended part of self. Extended because once you understand that the object is like you, your mind extends, the agency extends from within the self to outside the self. The idea of extended mind was developed by philosophers David Chalmers and Andy Clark in their work Extended Mind, where they explored the possibility of objects becoming agents controlling the body. So, for instance, a simple example is your phone trying to control how you traverse the world, how you think about the world. So the idea of extended mind here is your mind is not within your body; it's outside your body. So, so once the infant experiences emotions, it necessarily understands that the world is not just within me, it's also outside me. So there's an extension of self. While doing so, since the experiences of emotions could lead to the experience of locomotion, the infant also learns about verbs. It learns to use verbs at this point, and then it undergoes locomotion. The stimulus, so the stimulus is the one controlling the movement of the body. The control is not within the body. It's outside the body. For instance, the mother, the baby at this point follows the mother because the stimulus, the mother, becomes the center of control. The extended self is niche. The extended self, or the mother for an infant, is the set of all possible experiences. So it becomes the center of its attraction. The mother tries to control, the mother becomes the center of control of the infant, which is obvious. The infant follows the mother everywhere at this point. So the self is outside the body, it's not within the body. The entity is aware of the stimulus as the center of imitation. So once the infant learns to move around in relation to the stimulus, it learns to imitate. It learns the art of imitating entities in the external world. So next we move on to the fifth level self. In the fifth level self, there's something special about the fifth level self, because once the infant or the child learns to move around its environment, understand the space around it, what it does is it learns to focus. It learns to focus in the physical world. So there's so physics has this problem of the collapse of wave function in quantum mechanics. There's this problem where the physical world behaves in a fickle manner, and there have been experiments, namely by physicists such as Bean Radin, who have showed that when you focus on something, human focus on something is much more powerful than, let's say, the ability to focus in animals. So at this point, when the child learns to traverse the world around it, what it is doing is it is solidifying its mastery of the physical world, and that is key in collapsing the wave function. There's something about human vision which affects the very nature of the physical world. So the collapse of wave function is the child at this point has that ability to collapse the wave function if it were to impact an experimental setup. And at level 5, the infant learns spatial propositions because it learns the idea of where that space is as opposed to this space. So when the infant learns about the relationship between this and that, what it is necessarily doing is learning to think abstractly. So a level 5 self would think abstractly. And the level 5 self, now we can see that we have seen so far, we have adjectives, nouns, verbs, and now we have spatial propositions. So we have a complete recipe for a thought now. So at this point, there's origin of schema in the sense that we have schema is like various, it's like the DNA of thoughts inbuilt within us, and with it extracts thoughts from the environment, and it's like an inner mechanism of thoughts. So a level 5 self gets a mastery of space perception, and it learns to point. The act of pointing is key in developmental psychology, and you could look at the work of Jacques Lacan and his emphasis on why we should learn, why infants should know how to point at things, because that's how you know that they can think abstractly. So the level 5 self is aware of the stimulus as perennially existing in a particular location in space. This is key. This could seem a very simple idea, but when you look at mental illnesses, people suffering from, let's say anxiety, they have a very they struggle to understand the physical world because the anxiety does not allow them to see the space as it is. This is also quite common in autistic individuals who have problems in thinking abstractly. So the self at level 5 can point, can think abstractly. The self passes the object permanence test. The object permanence test is basically to identify that when an object is hidden behind something, you still recognize it as being present. Some children or autistic children cannot pass that test. So the level 5 self should pass an object permanent test. And then we move on to the 6th level self. The 6th level self, now we have a complete schema of thoughts. What is next is the repressed memories. Now we talk about memories. The memories, in the sense, this complete framework of thoughts. The idea of feelings at this level, the infant, the child understands and undergoes feelings. Feelings in the sense, Antonio Damasio has this definition of feeling, that feelings are answers to questions within your mind. So it gives you cognitive closure to experience feelings. So repressed memories, in Freud's sense, are the 6th level self represents that self which underlies the repressed memories. So when you answer a question, when the what question, the seed of thoughts is necessarily, each thought is a question. So each thought has a what in it. So the 6th level self, the child, when it is a 6th level self, identifies its memories or thoughts as answers to its questions about the world. So feelings and interrogative sentences. So once we have a complete system of thoughts, what we next what next emerges is the interrogative sentences, the what, when, and why. So once you have a proposition and assertion, the child learns to ask questions. So Antonio Damasio has a somatic marker hypothesis. He says that these questions, the what questions, they lead us to explore our memories. So when you see a simple example is when you see a distant object and you think that it's a snake, but when you move closer and you realize that it's when you realize that it's a snake, the input, it instantiates the experience of fear. But when you move forward and see that it's a piece of rope, then your assumptions about the world, about the stimulus, are proven wrong. So here, the 6th level self is basically a predictive processing system, which struggles with the world, struggles to master the world through predicting. So at this level, the self undergoes predictions, and we see that the prediction errors are more important as opposed to prediction success, because when you make an error, when you see something in the outside world, and when you have a conception of it, for instance, when you see something and you think that it's a snake, and then you find out that it's a prediction error, and it helps you. It helps you understand the world in a better way than just predicting in the right manner. So prediction error, I give obviously much more examples to solidify this assertion that prediction error is much more important than prediction success. So the self in the sixth level self is aware of the stimulus as behaving in an expected manner. So you have mastery over you master the physical world. You know how it behaves because you can make successful predictions about the world. But if you're comfortable with the world around you, you start living in a deterministic world. So prediction error is important to learn more about the same environment. So next we move on to the seventh level self. The seventh level self emerges from the sixth level self. So the sixth level self was the realm of what, and the seventh level self is the realm of self-awareness. So now that you know how the physical world behaves, the next emergent faculty that you will have is self-awareness. You start being aware of yourself. You start being aware of your own thoughts. So the emergent quality from being a good predictive processing agency is self-awareness. And which is also seen that when you put two words together in a sentence, such as "if this happens, then that," so this whole sentence represents a when, a single when. So a when is a collection of words. So the child learns when it knows to compare two words. So in level 7, self-awareness gives rise to self-conscious emotions. The agent, the child learns to experience self-conscious emotions such as guilt, shame. It tries to synthesize this moral aspect of life within itself. So the self-awareness is at the cost of identity. This is because when the self looks at itself, it is necessarily giving an opinion about itself to itself. So the identity is split here. Who is the self? Is the self who is looking at itself the self, or the self which is treating itself as an object? Is that the self, or the object is the true self? So in this drama of self-awareness, what we see is we lose that grip on what we call identity. And then you at level 7, you see that a child develops internal values, because when it can judge itself, it can learn to incorporate some values as to what is good and bad through self-conscious emotions. So the self in this level is aware of the stimulus as being itself, which observes itself. So you're not just the self, but you're also that object which is seen through itself. So the stimulus is like you treat yourself as a stimulus capable of judging itself. The self passes the theory of mind test. So the child at level 7 passes the theory of mind test because it posits that just like I am an entity, the stimulus too is an entity capable of its own independent thought processes, and it has a mind of its own. One of the most important test for the theory of mind test is Sally-Ann test. In psychology, the Sally-Ann test is about recognizing if so Sally and Anne are sisters, and Sally hides something from Anne, and then Anne, it is up to Anne to figure out if Sally has necessarily deceived her, or has she not hidden that entity or not. So trying to know the mind of others is what a theory of mind test is. So an infant at level 7 has to pass the theory of mind test in order for it to be an 8th level self. So now so we've seen a self-aware entity, and now what is left is, when you're moral, you start exploring the limits of morality. You start exploring, why should I be moral at all? Who is looking at me? Who is checking if I'm moral at all? that's when you start thinking, that's when the next emergent faculty is the metaphysical speculation. You start thinking what exists in the world beyond what is seen or what is available to me. So metaphysics is basically saying what could be more than just what is more apparent and more visible in the world. So the child would start thinking metaphysical thoughts. So since we had the when in previous level, we have the why which emerges from two whens. So the why, when you compare when I was this, so when you use in a sentence two whens, you get the conceptual framework to ask the why question. So so the metaphysical speculation. So when you think the metaphysical speculations lead you to think about religion, philosophy, and science, because these are major fields trying to know the truth in their own way. Religion tries to know the extent of the world as we know it in a different manner, as opposed to, let's say, philosophy or science. So each discipline has its own merits, and each discipline is trying to know the truth, which is beyond what is apparent, and what can be predicted. So the metaphysical speculations is what the child does when it's an 8th level self. So while doing so, the child goes through the understanding of what it is like for others to experience the world. So it tries to understand what are the limits of experience of other people as well, when it tries to understand the origins or the limits of the world as it knows, as it experiences itself. So the self is aware of the stimulus as having a mind of its own. So the stimulus, namely the environment, has a mind of its own. The child starts thinking if the environment is like God, having its own mind. So here we see questions such as are we in a simulation? Are we controlled by some entity? Are we like a program? Are we part of this very deterministic and controlled environment? Is the world just that? So these metaphysical questions are explored when the child is an 8th level self. So finally, to summarize my 8th level self model, I could just go through this table. So movement and movement driven attention is key here, because movement signifies the body, something the body can do. Movement driven attention is a purely mental aspect. So both you bring together the empirical as well as the pure in Kantian sense when you bring together the bodily and the mental faculties. So the attempt is to bridge the gap between empirical and pure, and see how the ideal and the empirical world can fit in. So in level self, we have seen that the appearance of movement at loss of form. So the table as a very basic self, it appears to move when it loses its form. So that is the only kind of movement that you can exhibit as a self, because to be a self, you have to change, and you have to something has to change, and it has to exhibit some kind of physical change. So the form or essence of the first level self is a physical, non-moving body, such as a table. And the syntax, the faculty, the linguistic capacity that the first level self incorporates within itself is the I, the isness with itself. And the second level self, in the second level self, as we have seen, the entities, the entity or the child experience a single body part movement, which is reflexes. So the essence in that is single body part which moves, such as the senses. So the senses are essence of the second level self. And in level 2, the child learns the isness, and it learns to use adjectives. In third level self, we have seen that the senses collaborate and they either expose themselves to the environment or choose to not expose themselves to the environment. So there's collaborative movement of body parts, and the body with collaborative movements of body parts is the essence here in the third level self. And in doing so, in experiencing these emotions, the child learns that the environment is full of nouns. The fourth level self, as we have seen, is stimulus-driven locomotion and attention. As we have seen, the mother controls the movement and attention of the entity, which is the child. It controls where the child moves and what the child sees. So the movement of the stimulus. So since the movement of the self is dependent on the movement of the stimulus through extension of mind, the essence here, which is preserved, is the movement of the stimulus itself. And that gives the child the idea of time, because when you see something moving, that's when you know that external time exists. So in level 4, the child learns verbs because it knows that the stimulus is something which can move from one place to another. In level 5, as we have seen, pointing is a characteristic faculty that the child learns, and the collapse of wave function is a specialty of human vision. Since the child learns to point, it learns that space is something which exists abstractly outside in the physical world. And then, since propositions is how you understand this space, in comparison to that, the child learns to use propositions. In level 6, the child, there's expectation-based movement. So the child now knows where to move and how much to move, because it's learned how to do the predictive processing in a proper way. So the schema here is the essence or form which is preserved in this in the child's experience, because the schema is a collection of thoughts. It's a collection of thoughts, the whats, the propositions, which ask for questions such as what. The 7th level self, the movement to infer unknown behavior. So in level 7, as we saw, the child develops empathy towards other individuals, and the child in doing so develops a social identity, because it looks it judges itself, its actions, it treats itself as an object. And emerging from the what is the when. So in level 8, the child finally shifts its focus on the unknown, non-existing entity, the metaphysical stuff out there. So the essence or the faculty that is preserved in doing so is the unknown metaphysical entity. So even though we don't know who or what God is, we still we still feel or we know that something like a God or a completely control driven system exists, even though we don't see it explicitly. So this is where the why questions are so important. So the child, when it gets to when it starts asking the why questions, that's when you know that the child could do metaphysical thinking. So this my whole theory could be summarized in this little diagram. So the self, you as a self, just like a table. You could consider yourself as a table with just a body, but then when you have the free will, to interact with the world, then you become more than a table. You become just more than the I, struggling with the isness within. But you also try to find your identity in the world out there. You become more than just an object within objects. You become the subject, because you become the center of agency, and then you start interacting. The only way to transcend your I-ness or the bodiness or the isness within is in the form of expression of free will, and in the form of interaction with the world out there. So when you interact with the world, you learn. So you can see that in an emergent manner, you experience adjectives, nouns, verbs, prepositions, what, when, and why. And the emergent chain of experiences is reflex action giving rise to emotions, emotions giving rise to locomotion, locomotion giving rise to the faculty of object permanence giving rise to feelings, feelings giving rise to self-awareness, and then finally you have a theory of mind of others within your mind, and you know that the world has a mind of its own. You know that people around you have their own minds. So this is so I'd like to end my presentation here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pooja. It was very excellent and deep presentation, and the way you engaged with the question of consciousness, and it really invoked us to at one point to read your book, because you inculcated a lot of curiosity, and it was a very excellent conceptualization for that matter, you know. And so we are joined by so many important speakers. So first I would like to invite Professor Anant Kumar Giri sir to kindly be our first discussant and give your comment and thought on the very presentation. Yes. Anant bhai, are you there? So he's taking some time. So maybe Minati Pradhan ji.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible.
I don't know, I should tell good evening or good night to everyone. So it's very beautiful presentation by Miss Pooja Soni for her very insightful presentation. Actually, she has taken our hand through the different levels of self and awareness. May I ask a question? I mean, I was not writing the things. So in the first slide itself, you told about the meta problem. You know, I just want to know whether that meta problem solves all these three levels of consciousness. All the three levels of consciousness means, I mean, the simple consciousness, which deals with only with I, and the self consciousness, which is only possessed with the human beings. And the third one is that cosmic consciousness, which is the awareness of self and universe, and possessed by only who are enlightened. Whether this meta problem deals with all these three consciousness. Can you please shed little light? It will be great. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. The meta problem of consciousness is basically the problem of explaining when or how we start to think about when or how we start being spiritual, and we start asking questions like why does God exist? Why do we exist? So this is an emergent faculty that we learn. So it is a problem which incorporates all these small problems of the I, the self-conscious, because I believe that without self-consciousness you can't arrive at the question of the why. You can't just be an I, let's say a plant exhibiting some kind of interaction with the environment, and you can't expect the plant to start to ask questions such as why do I exist, why does the world exist. So the meta problem of consciousness is like an emergent problem. it asks us to solve all the small problems about self-consciousness and the I, and then finally arrive at the solution of explaining why is it that we think that we exist. So a spiritual person has to go through various stages of trying to understand the I, trying to understand the self-consciousness, trying to understand the world in all these complex ways. So this is the reason I see consciousness as an emergent phenomenon. It's not just you get stuck. When you get stuck, being a single level self, that is when you get into mental illnesses. So the idea of emergence is key here. So the meta problem of consciousness incorporates within itself all other problems, including the mind-body problem.
Thank you.
Yes, so one person is asking Chandra about what, according to you, could falsify your theory.
My theory could be falsified if developmental psychology did not show the right kind of results. If it's proven that these faculties don't emerge, they exist within the brain, and there's no competition between different levels of self, that's when I think my theory will be falsified.
Okay. Any other participant?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Good evening, sir. Vidyasagar here. Yeah. My small query is this self-consciousness will be help for the counseling process of the school students, because they are some suffering from the WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, etc., and other like peer pressure and so on. So there need group counseling, group guidance about the. So how can this be can help? Thank you.
Okay, I actually didn't hear the question properly, but I suppose I understand the question properly. So mental illnesses, there are certain mental illnesses which. So the problem with the field of psychology right now is that it treats the subject as an object. It treats the subject as an object which behaves in a certain way. So when you're mentally ill, when you say I have depression, you necessarily identify yourself as an object, not as a subject who is feeling those feelings. So I certainly agree with you. Yes, I believe that when a person is self-conscious, the person has more control over themselves, and it's very necessary to reinforce this ability of questioning oneself when in kids, especially when it's necessary for kids to self-reflect, to be aware of their own morals. When you're self-aware, you know that you share with other people an empathetic relationship. You can observe your own behavior. So kids for sure have to be more mindful of the faculty of self-awareness, because once you this is how you incorporate morality within yourself. So I agree that when you're more self-conscious, you could be less mentally ill, but maybe not so. But yes.
Thank you.
May I add one more point, please?
Please.
Yeah. Actually, when he's talking about the school children, I think they need little bit of guidance to guide their emotions, which a therapist or a counselor can do. Make them aware of their feelings and the emotions, so that and guide them how to overcome that. So that can be helpful in my view. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to say this.
Thank you. Any other participant? We can see some names: Peter M, Professor Madhuri. Any of you?
What do you mean by states? That's my question.
The states are basically, how I define the state would be how a psychologist would define the age of a child, which, let's say, learns to pass the object permanence test. So the state is closely related to the developmental age of the baby or a child. So,
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Thank you.
May I ask one question? It is not question. It is a I'm a basically the sociological orientation. So my question is little bit oriented towards sociological construction of consciousness, and there is a relationship between human brain and human historical culture, but there is an important distinction to keep in mind. Our individual neurology interacts with consciousness in terms of both ideas and thought, and in terms of social behavior or interaction. Often humans accentuate either the mental or the behavioral as social. Many also attempt to deceive others by demanding behavior over thinking, but using social cognition to manipulate the behavior of others. So different organisms have different neurological system and therefore different reaction to their environment. So, and I think there is a contestation about the difference between the consciousness, what is the determining factor. In that sense, I do not believe there is no superorganic entity known as culture or consciousness. If there was, it could not explain individual differences. So how do you, respond this question about the determining factor of differences in consciousness?
I do identify with the social control that an individual is subjected to. It's just like saying that your mind is extended onto the physical world, and the society around you could control your actions, or an entity such as a mother for a child can control. When a child is at the age where it just learns to crawl, the mother signifies that controlling agent. You can see yourself as a person. You are controlled just like the baby is controlled by the mother. So your social setup, people around you, the organizations around you control you, because that entity, an organization, is the center of both positive and negative experiences. So it's not just good or bad, it's both good and bad. For instance, an organization which is very much close to you, which incites both negative and positive experiences within you, is capable of controlling you. So neurologically, I have no idea where specifically this ability to experience the extendedness of the individual is located. I'm certain that there's no specific area in the brain, but for sure, as humans, we are more dependent on the environment around us to the extent that it starts to control us. The control is no longer within us. You can see a simple example is addiction. When someone is addicted to the substance, the presence and absence of the substance necessarily decides the person's thought process. It controls the person. So any organization or an addictive substance, when it becomes the center of both positive and negative experiences, it incites in you the most intense happiness and sadness. That's when it starts to control you. That's when you lose the control, and the environment can try to control you. So that's when you know that you're just like an object among objects. Objects could be the subject, extended subject. You're not the control. If you lose agency, you're nothing. You're just a table. You're just like a table. So this idea of extendedness is more crucial. We already see that gadgets or computers or mobile phones, we depend so solely on those gadgets, which function as extension of our memories, that we tend to be controlled by those entities. Yes, so a simple example is also like social media. When you check your social media profile, it gives you so much self identity. You necessarily lose your identity to that platform, because it gives you happiness and sadness. It completes you. So some things in the environment are capable of controlling you, because such things become the center of both positive and negative experiences. So this is the key aspect. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I tried.
Thank you so much. Now, may I invite Susri Sangeeta Mishra? She is also our co-nurturer. Yes.
Thank you, Randeep ji. And at the outset, I must thank Ms. Pooja Soni for a very wonderful presentation, very erudite and insightful. I just have a small question. There was in this, I think it was in the third level, I can go back to the slide. I'll just basically deals with the self in relation to the past self and the future self. So how does consciousness play a role in that? So if you can just elaborate a little more on that, and then I'll ask a follow-up question also.
Can you say that again?
In that slide of yours, I'm not able to, if you can go to that slide.
I have the slide, yes.
Yeah. The past, self in relation to the past and the self in relation to the future. So, basically on that slide, I wanted to, if you could elaborate that slide a little more, that's where I actually kind of, got disconnected. So that was a very interesting one. So if you could just elaborate a little more on that. So
yes. So if you have heard of a philosopher, Fichte, so this is the referencing that that a self does. It is basically trying to use what it knows from the past. What you know is what you have been in the past. Your memory of yourself is your being from the past. So when you experience the world, for Fichte, when you experience the world, you project you project onto the world your guesses about the world, and then you hope that your guesses or your idea of the world and its order is true. So you project. So that's where the aspect of future is important. So the you, there's no present. You don't live in the present. the self, when it experiences something, it has the choice to either accept the change or not accept the change. So in doing that, when it accepts the change, it knows that the change is in line with what it has been in the past, what its memory is asking it to be. So the past is necessarily the you which has been, and which is the memory, which is memory itself. And the future is the choice, the projection, or the accomplishment of the choice. When you choose, when you experience something positively or negatively, it is taken for granted that you're projecting a choice onto the world. You know what the change is, and then you know that what the change is because you have been in the past. You know, you have the memories, you know what makes you comfortable. And then when you choose to experience something, that's when you feel that you have experienced something positively. And when you experience something negatively, that's when you know that you have to resist that change. So this is the interplay between the past and the future. So the present is like a collaboration between your past, which has been, and the future, which is going to be.
Okay, interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sri Appa. So do you have any song of thanks for today's?
I think you can do that today.
May I ask Miniti Pradhanji?
Hello. Yeah,
Yes.
I can read a poem if people have patience to listen.
Yes.
We are already.
Miniti Pradhan is a very famous poet, very creative poet.
So thank you.
So we offer vote of thanks, like song of thanks. Yes.
Okay. So I can read the poetry, then say vote of thanks.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. This is a recently written poem. The title is Holding Hands. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, but we cannot see you. Kindly, yes. Yeah.
So the title of the poem is Holding Hands. Let's hold our hands. Let's hold our hands and create a circle of connectedness, and a circle of hope, a circle of oneness. Let's drop all our boundaries, the boundaries of ego, caste, race, rich, poor, and nationality, only to embrace the humanity, a chain of equality, equanimity, a chain of equitability, and a journey to eternity. Let's have the ripple effect, as no one is correct. All the bias, prejudices, everything selects. Delve deep into the ground and reach for the sky, not let this human birth just like that pass by. So let's hold our hands, clench each other's fist, and create a circle of connectedness. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you. Now, on the behalf of Swadhyasa Chakra, I, Minati Pradhan, thank our chief speaker, Ms. Pooja Soni, for her very beautiful, deep, and insightful presentation, and very patiently answering all the questions being asked to her and explaining it very nicely. I also thank our moderator, Professor Anand Kumar Giri, who is not here, but still for his in his mentorship, we are just holding hands and going forward. So I thank him very wholeheartedly. I thank all the participants who are on the Zoom platform, or as well as in the Facebook platform, for their enriching present to our webinar. I thank Mr. Vidyasagar for his deep question, and Ms. Susri Opa also, seeing her after so many days. So for their questions, and other participants who asked the questions and gave suggestions and everything. And the last, not the least, I thank our convener, Dr. Randir Kumar Gautam for planning, executing, and patiently handling all these things with or without us. So thank you so much. And
Thank you.
if I have forgotten someone, please pardon me.
Yes, I also
thank everyone.
thank
Thank you.
Miniti Pradhanji for her kind support. And thank you, Pooja Soni. It was very excellent presentation, and we will, look forward to invite you in our future dialogues also. Those who are new, we are nurturing dialogue every Sunday or sometimes on Wednesday. We are looking for our co-nurturer who can help us in thinking and imagining the world which can make beauty, dignity, and dialogue. A world which is free of all the constraint of human liberation. So thank you so much. And again,
thank you
we
everyone
are
and
so
good
grateful.
night.
Thank you and have a good night. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you so